There is a hunger that lives in the marrow of the human soul, a gnawing emptiness that whispers in the spaces between heartbeats, in the silence after midnight when the world sleeps, but you remain awake, wrestling with shadows that have no name. You know this hunger. Perhaps you've fed it with substances that promise to fill the void, perhaps with people who could never love you the way you needed to be loved, perhaps with work that consumed your days until you forgot what it felt like to simply be. Tonight, we descend into the psychology of addiction, not as observers from some sterile academic distance, but as fellow travelers who have felt the pull of our own hidden darkness. Carl Jung, the great explorer of the human psyche, understood something that most addiction specialists miss entirely, that every addiction is a spiritual crisis wearing the mask of a physical compulsion. So turn off the lights, let the world outside fade away, because what we're about to explore requires courage, the courage to look into the abyss of your own soul and acknowledge what you find there. Carl Jung once wrote to Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, with words that would forever change how we understand the nature of addiction. Your craving for alcohol was the equivalent, on a low level, of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness. Think about that for a moment. Jung wasn't saying that addiction is merely a disease, though it certainly has biological components. He was saying that addiction is a misdirected search for the sacred, a desperate attempt by the soul to fill a void that was never meant to be filled by external substances or experiences. But to understand this fully, we must first descend into what Jung called the shadow. Imagine, if you will, that you are standing before a mirror in a dimly lit room. The reflection you see is familiar. It's the version of yourself you present to the world, the competent one, the composed one, the one who has it all together, or at least appears to. But now imagine that the lights grow dimmer, and in that mirror other faces begin to emerge, faces of shame, of rage, of desperate need, of the child who was abandoned, of the teenager who was betrayed, of the adult who learned to smile while bleeding internally. This is your shadow, everything you've pushed down, locked away, refused to acknowledge. Jung understood that the shadow doesn't disappear when we ignore it. Instead, it grows stronger in the darkness, feeding on our neglect until it finds ways to express itself that we never consciously chose. For many, addiction becomes the shadow's voice. That first drink, that first hit, that first toxic relationship. It's not just about pleasure or escape. It's about finally feeling something authentic, even if that authenticity is wrapped in self-destruction. Think about the last time you felt truly seen, truly understood. Not the performance version of yourself, but the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are beneath all the masks. For many addicts, the only time they feel this authenticity is in the grip of their compulsion. The bottle doesn't judge, the needle doesn't ask questions. The abusive partner at least provides intensity that feels more real than the numbness of everyday existence. But here's what Jung understood that most people miss. Addiction is never really about the substance or behavior itself. It's about what that substance or behavior represents to the unconscious mind. Take Sarah, a successful attorney who drinks herself to sleep every night. On the surface, it's about stress relief. But deeper, in the realm of the shadow, it's about the little girl who learned that love was conditional on being perfect. The alcohol becomes permission to stop performing, even if that permission comes with a price that grows steeper each night. Or consider Marcus, who cycles through destructive relationships with narcissistic partners. He tells himself he's unlucky in love, but his shadow knows better. Each toxic relationship is an attempt to resolve the original wound, the mother who withheld affection, the father who was emotionally absent. He's not seeking healthy love. He's seeking familiar pain because familiar pain feels like home. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat. We don't just repeat behaviors, we repeat entire emotional patterns, hoping this time will be different. This time we'll get it right. This time we'll finally heal the original wound. But addiction keeps us locked in the past, reliving trauma rather than resolving it. The tragedy is that the very thing we use to escape our pain becomes the thing that ensures we never heal from it. But Jung offered something that pure medical models of addiction often miss: the understanding that every descent into the underworld of the psyche contains the seeds of transformation. In his work with patients struggling with alcoholism, Jung discovered that recovery wasn't just about stopping drinking. It was about what he called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of the self, including the shadow. This is perhaps the most radical insight in all of addiction psychology. Your addiction is not a sign of weakness. It's not a moral failing. It's your psyche's desperate attempt to communicate something essential about your deepest needs. The problem isn't that you have needs. The problem is that you've learned to meet those needs in ways that destroy rather than nourish you. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question. What were you seeking the first time you used your substance of choice? Not the physical sensation, but the emotional state. Were you seeking peace, connection, a sense of aliveness, the feeling of being enough, just as you are? Now here's the deeper question. What would it look like to seek those same things in ways that actually serve your highest good? Jung believed that every addiction contains within it a spiritual longing that has been misdirected. The alcoholic is seeking spirit. Literally, the word alcohol comes from the Arabic al-kul, meaning the essence. The sex addict is seeking union and transcendence. The workaholic is seeking purpose and meaning. But we're looking for these transcendent experiences in finite material forms that can never truly satisfy infinite spiritual hunger. This is why, according to Jung, lasting recovery requires what he called a spiritual awakening. Not necessarily religious, but a recognition that we are more than just biological machines driven by chemical impulses. We are souls having a human experience, and the soul's needs cannot be met by substances or behaviors that only touch the surface of our being. The path forward isn't about perfection or even about never feeling pain again. It's about developing a conscious relationship with your shadow rather than letting it control you from the darkness. This means sitting with the parts of yourself you've been running from, the grief you've never processed, the anger you've never expressed, the needs you've never acknowledged, the dreams you've never pursued because you believed you weren't worthy of them. It means recognizing that beneath every addiction is a cry for wholeness, and that cry, when heard with compassion rather than judgment, can become the beginning of genuine transformation. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." But choice, Real choice is only possible when we stop running from the truth of who we are, including the parts of ourselves we'd rather not acknowledge. Your addiction has been a teacher, though a harsh one. It has shown you the depth of your need, the intensity of your longing, the strength of your survival instinct. These are not weaknesses. They are the raw materials of your transformation. The question is, are you ready to redirect that same intensity toward healing rather than harm, toward growth rather than destruction, toward becoming the person you were meant to be before the world taught you to hide your light under the shadow of shame? If these words have touched something deep within you, if you recognize yourself in this exploration of the shadow and the spiritual nature of addiction, then you are already beginning the most important journey of your life. I'm not going to ask you to like or subscribe, though if this resonates, I hope you'll stay with us for this journey. Instead, I'm going to ask you to do something far more difficult and far more important. Go sit in silence for 10 minutes tonight. Not to meditate or achieve anything, but simply to listen. Listen to what your addiction has been trying to tell you. Listen to the needs beneath the compulsion. Listen to the part of yourself that has been crying out for wholeness. Jung said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." You have spent enough time dreaming that something external will save you. The path home to yourself begins with the courage to look within, to befriend your shadow, and to honor the spiritual hunger that has been driving your search all along. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are a soul learning to find its way back to wholeness. And that journey, though difficult, is the most sacred work you will ever do.